not drifting, not venting atmosphere, not damaged in any visible way. A faint shimmer rippled across its hull where the beam had struck, like heat rising from summer stone, and then it stilled, and the ship floated on as though nothing had happened at all. The bridge was completely silent. Thesson stared at the screen for 3 full seconds before he spoke. "Full barrage," he said. "Erase it." The order moved through the fleet like a current, across dozens of Dominion warships. Weapons charged simultaneously. Cannons glowed. Missile arrays locked. The space between the fleet and the single human ship became a geometry of targeting beams. Then they fired. The darkness became light. Energy beams, concussive missiles, plasma charges. Everything struck the small silver vessel in a cascading storm that should have reduced it to atoms. The system flared white. For a long moment, nothing could be seen through the chaos of it. Slowly, the fire dissipated. The human warship hung in the dark, perfectly intact. Its shield pulsed brighter than before, almost luminous, as though the assault had fed it rather than wounded it. And it had not moved, not 1 meter, in any direction. Then the human captain's voice came through the channel again, and the quietness of it was somehow worse than any fury would have been. "You were warned." What happened next took less than 2 seconds. There was no dramatic build-up, no glowing cannon, no audible charge, no warning of any kind. A single pulse of white light emerged from the front of the human ship, compact and fast. Traveling across the void was silence that felt almost contemptuous. It struck the Dominion battleship Sovereign Claim, a vessel that had survived 4 wars and carried 1,500 crew, and the ship simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, no screaming energy signature fading on the sensors. The space where it had been was empty, as though it had never existed at all, as though the universe had quietly decided it didn't belong there anymore. "Report," Thesson said. His voice was very level. He was proud of that. His tactical officer answered in a whisper, as if speaking at full volume might invite another pulse. "Battleship destroyed, sir. No debris. No energy trace. No survivors." Thesson looked at the empty patch of black on his display for a long time. In 300 years of conquest, he had watched armies break. He had watched fleets scatter. He had watched entire planetary defense networks crumble under coordinated assault. He had never watched a capital warship simply disappear. The weight of his officer's silence pressed against him from all sides. "Formation Delta," he said at last. "Encircle the target. Every angle covered." The Dominion fleet spread wide, dozens of warships forming a vast ring around the single human ship, weapons locked from above, below, the flanks, every vector sealed. There was nowhere for the vessel to go, no direction that wasn't covered by enough firepower to reduce a moon to gravel. The human ship remained exactly where it was. It didn't attempt to retreat. It didn't broadcast any distress signal. It didn't even power up additional systems in preparation for what was coming. It simply floated inside the ring of Dominion warships with a stillness that was beginning to feel less like helplessness and more like patience. "Human vessel," Thesson said, allowing a cold edge into his voice for the first time. "You have destroyed Dominion property. That is not a crime we permit to go unanswered." A pause. Then the human captain spoke again. "You cross a line," she said. The voice was a woman's. Thesson now realized, steady and unhurried, as though they were having this conversation in a quiet room somewhere, with no urgency at all. "This system is protected." Protected. The word felt almost archaic. The Dominion had made a point, over 3 centuries, of ensuring that no word like that had any meaning anymore. Thesson raised his hand, preparing to give the order, and then his long-range sensors erupted. "Admiral." His sensor officer's voice had changed completely. The professional steadiness was gone, replaced by something raw and unsteady. Multiple warp signatures entering the system. Dozens. A pause. "Hundreds, sir." Thesson turned to the main display. At the edge of the system, space was tearing open, not in one place, but in dozens, then scores, then too many to count individually. Each rupture bled white light before something emerged from it. Large, silver, impossibly organized. Warships, human warships, arriving in perfect formation, slipping into position with the calm efficiency of a military that had done this before, that had planned this specifically, that had been waiting for precisely this moment. The single ship had not been defending the planet out of desperation. It had been standing there because it had been asked to hold the line while the rest of the fleet arrived. Thesson watched the display update in real time as the scale of what he was seeing became fully apparent. Cruisers, carriers, battleships larger than anything in the human catalog he had been briefed on. They arranged themselves in clean, silent lines behind the first warship, and the patience of their formation, the complete absence of aggression or theatrics in their arrival, made Thesson's stomach drop in a way that fire never had. The Dominion fleet, largest in the known galaxy, looked, for the first time in its history, like the smaller force. A transmission spread across every frequency in the system simultaneously. This is the United Human Defense Fleet. The voice was clear and unhurried, carrying particular authority of someone who has no need to raise it. You have fired upon a protected world. You have destroyed civilian-adjacent territory. Stand down your weapons, withdraw from the system, and you will be permitted to leave. Refuse, and we will remove you. Thesson looked at his tactical display for a long moment. Then, Dominion ships forward, break their center, concentrate fire on the lead vessel. The fleet moved. Dominion weapons blazed across the dark, and for a moment it looked like it always had, like the inevitable, crushing advance of something that had never once been stopped. But the human fleet didn't scatter. Along the front line, blue energy shields linked together, ship by ship, forming a continuous wall of coherent light. The Dominion barrage struck it and bled away into nothing. And then, with the same calm precision that had characterized everything the humans had done since this engagement began, the United Human Defense Fleet advanced. They fired in sequence. Not wildly, not with the raw, overwhelming volume the Dominion favored, but with a surgical economy that was somehow more frightening. A beam here, and a Dominion cruiser lost its engines. A pulse there, and a destroyer's shields collapsed. Two ships would target the same vessel at precise intervals, and the mathematics of it were merciless. Not overkill, but exact destruction, as if each shot had been calculated in advance. One by one, Dominion warships went dark. Some exploded. Others simply powered down, disabled so cleanly that their crew survived, drifting helpless in the void, stripped of any ability to threaten without being killed. The human fleet was making a point. They could be merciful. They were choosing to be, for now, because they could afford to. Another Dominion battleship vanished in white light. "We cannot break through," his officer whispered. The words had the sound of a confession. Thesson looked at his display for a long time. Then he looked at the first human warship, the one that had been there from the beginning, that had never moved, that had absorbed the full firepower of his fleet and stood unscratched. It was still in the same position, between Earth and everything that threatened it, steady and silent, like a door that had no interest in being opened. One final transmission came from the human flagship, broadcast on every frequency, clearly intended not just for Thesson, but for every observer in range, every small empire, every free world, every scout ship and trader vessel that had lingered at the edges of the system to watch. You were allowed to move through the galaxy because no one was there to stop you. That era is over. Go home. What followed was not a rout in the traditional sense. It was more like a correction. Dominion ships broke formation and fled toward open warp lanes, but the human fleet had predicted every exit vector. Silver warships sealed the system's jump points with the coordinated precision of something that had been planned long before today. Escape was not impossible, but it was slow and costly. Every path blocked or narrowed until the Dominion ships leaked from the system one by one, damaged and diminished, rather than surging away in a show of defiant speed. Thesson's own ship was among the last to go. He stood at the viewport as the Eternal Claim finally crossed the threshold into warp, and he watched the blue planet recede behind him. He watched the human fleet settle back into position around it, not triumphant, not celebrating, not pursuing, just returning to station, as if this were exactly what they had expected, as if they had been prepared to do it indefinitely. The first warship still floated at the front, unmoving, waiting. Across the galaxy, in the days and weeks that followed, the story spread the way real things spread. not through official broadcasts or political announcements, but through whispers, through the account of traders who had been at the system's edge, through the sensor logs of scout ships belonging to smaller empires who had watched in silence and recorded everything they saw. They had seen the Dominion fleet arrive. They had seen the single human ship say no. They had seen what came next. For centuries, the galaxy had organized itself around a single truth, that the Carthal Dominion was unstoppable, and that accommodation was the only rational response to their advance. Civilizations had surrendered their sovereignty not because they were cowards, but because the mathematics of resistance had always seemed impossible. You could not fight the inevitable. You could only hope to survive it. But the mathematics had changed. There was a new variable now, a force that did not invade, that did not threaten, that did not demand tribute or territory, a force that simply stood between the vulnerable and the powerful and refused, quietly, completely, without anger or cruelty, to move. In council chambers and command posts from one edge of the galaxy to the other, leaders who had spent decades in quiet despair looked at the sensor recordings from that small, unremarkable star system and felt something they had almost forgotten how to feel. Not hope as a wish, hope as a fact. Somewhere in the vast dark, there was a line, and humanity had drawn it. For 300 years, the Carthal Dominion had moved the galaxy like a tide that never receded. They did not conquer with haste. They did not need to. Their fleet would enter a system, and the planets below would simply yield. Defense grids would go dark. Commanders would lower their flags before a single shot was fired. Entire civilizations, some of them ancient, some of them proud, would look up at the black silhouettes filling their skies and make the only calculation that seemed rational: survival over dignity. 700 worlds had fallen this way, not to fire and ruin, but to the simple, suffocating weight of the Dominion's reputation. Their ships were massive, obsidian-dark vessels that absorbed light rather than reflected it. They arrived in silence. They left with everything. And in the centuries since their first conquest, no force in the known galaxy had given them reason to pause. Their name had become a synonym for the inevitable. The Dominion Admiral, Varek Thesson, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the eternal claim, and watched a blue-green planet rotate slowly beneath him. It was a small world by most measures. Modest oceans, thin atmosphere, unremarkable star. The long-range surveys had flagged it with a single annotation: one inhabited world, primitive interstellar capability, no defensive treaty alliances on record. Thesson had conquered 100 worlds that looked exactly like this one. He was already composing the surrender terms in his mind when his tactical officer spoke. Admiral. There was a strange quality to the man's voice. Not alarm, exactly. More like confusion. The way someone sounds when they encounter a word they don't recognize. There is a vessel between us and the planet. Thesson looked at the main display. It was a single ship. Small, absurdly small compared to the wall of Dominion warships behind him. Its hull was silver and dark gray, polished in a way that made it look almost ceremonial, marked near the bow with a symbol he didn't recognize. It sat completely still in the black between his fleet and the planet below, not advancing, not retreating, not broadcasting any distress signal, just waiting. Thesson almost smiled. Almost. Open a channel, he said. The transmission spread across all frequencies, as it always did. Heavy formal, designed to communicate not just words, but the full gravity of what stood behind them. You are outnumbered. Move aside or be destroyed. The words hung in the silence of the bridge. Around him, officers watched their screens with casual confidence. This was routine. The smaller ship would move. They always moved. The response came after a single breath of silence. The voice was calm. Not the strained calm of someone trying to conceal their fear, but the deep, settled calm of someone who had already decided what they were going to do long before this moment arrived. Negative. Advance denied. The bridge of the eternal claim went absolutely still. Thesson sat forward in his command chair. He turned the words over in his mind as though searching them for a mistranslation. Advance denied. In 3 centuries. He had heard civilizations beg. He had heard warlords threaten. He had heard philosophers argue, diplomats negotiate, and generals bluster. He had heard every variation of surrender dressed up in different clothing. He had never heard this. "Scan that vessel," he ordered, his voice quieter than usual. The results appeared on his screen within seconds, and his science officer's frown deepened as she read them aloud. The ship's reactor output was unlike anything in the Dominion's catalogs. Its energy signature fluctuated in patterns that didn't correspond to any known propulsion or weapons technology. Its shield configuration didn't match any recorded design. Weapons, the officer said slowly. Unknown. Shields, also unknown. Thesson studied the small silver ship on his display. The uncertainty should have made him cautious. Instead, it made him deliberate. He opened the channel again. "Human vessel, you are facing the Carthal Dominion. We have never been stopped. Move aside." No hesitation this time. Not even a pause. "We know exactly who you are," the human captain replied, "and you will not pass." No anger, no bravado, no trembling at the edges. Just a statement of fact, delivered with the kind of quiet certainty that belongs to people who have already accepted every consequence of their decision. Thesson felt something shift in his chest, something small and unfamiliar. He dismissed it. "One cruiser forward," he said. "Warning shot. Let them understand what they're refusing." The cruiser Varek moved from formation, its main cannon building to a charge. The blue light grew until it was almost painful to look at. Then the beam tore through the dark in a single blinding line and struck the human ship dead center. The explosion of light was satisfying. It always was. The Dominion officers waited for the debris field. When the light faded, the human warship was still there,